Hi, I'm Sylvie Cadavar, Director of Strategic Marketing at Samsung US, and I'm here also with Gerrit Schaus, Director of Market Intelligence and Business Development in Europe. Jim Gantier, we're very happy to see you. You are the Vice President of Marketing, Metrics and Solution, Industry Standard Service Division at HP. And we're here with you and very honored to be with you here at Tech at Work.
My pleasure.
Jim, we've heard a lot this week about converged infrastructure. Can you tell us how innovations like HP thermal logic fit in this picture?
Absolutely. So if you think about converged infrastructure, we fundamentally believe that that's the way the new data centers of the future will be built. And part of that has to be the fact that you're looking at it from an end-to-end perspective. When I think of all of the customers and all of the CIOs that I have the pleasure of talking to, one of the top pain points they always bring up is power and cooling. As a matter of fact, a lot of them are finally recognizing that power and cooling is the #1 OpEx issue of most of their data center spend. So thermal logic, unlike a lot of the other competitors, doesn't just talk about how we're going to use lower power components. What it allows our customers to do is not only reduce their power consumption, but reclaim a lot of their already over-provisioned assets, and in some cases actually helps them extend the life of their data center.
Can you talk specifically how Samsung low-voltage DDR3 memory is allowing customers to reclaim data center capacity?
Absolutely. So Samsung has been a great partner of ours. And what I mean by that is by working with HP and partnering with us on some of these key areas, the net is that together, if we look at something like DDR2 to DDR3 conversions, we can comfortably and confidently walk into customers together and have the conversation on how we've helped them eliminate roughly 70% generation over generation of their energy utilization. That's huge for our customers. And if you throw on top of that everything I just mentioned for thermal logic, HP plus Samsung under the thermal logic and converged infrastructure story makes a great offering.
And in the same way, can you talk about how Samsung Green SSD is also allowing customers to reclaim data center capacity?
It's actually pretty much the same story. Again, with power and cooling being top of mind for most CIOs, what ends up happening is that with SSD, not only do we have the capability of reducing the amount of power, not only can we give them much faster I/O, as a matter of fact, up to 80% or 80 times faster I/O, but equally as important, now what that allows us to do is under that converged infrastructure, treat storage in that resource pool the same way we would treat our server, storage, and networking components.
Can you talk about how Samsung's low-voltage memory is helping HP win in the marketplace?
Definitely. I mean, if you look at market share numbers, our Blade platforms are at 52.4% market share. If you look at what's going on in the x86 space, we're at 39.4%. So clearly CXOs are believing the converged infrastructure story, and we do that with partners. Case in point, if you look at two most recent wins, there was just recently an InfoWorld bake-off where our Blade system platforms, mostly our 460s, clearly was the hands-down winner. And then on top of that, if you look at spec power, which is one of the premier benchmark numbers that everybody uses for energy efficiency and energy utilization, we just won that with our SL product line. So again, under the converged infrastructure story, working with great partners like Samsung, we're able to deliver a value proposition that nobody else can touch. And again, clearly CXOs are voting for HP.
Jim, what are the most critical challenges that IT managers face today, and how is HP helping to address them?
So if I were to take a lot of the conversations that I hear from CIOs, basically it boils down to a couple of key areas. The first one is that they've realized we've got way too many silos in the data center. And those silos typically lead to additional cost, additional complexity, and in some cases a large number of groups that need to be choreographed just to get a server up and running. The second thing that I hear from CIOs quite often is that whether it's applications or the disbursement of those applications, there's a lot of sprawl going on in the data center. And that sprawl, again, leads to, unfortunately, the fact that now they have to spend 70% of their time just on basic maintenance and operations, as opposed to spending their time on innovations. So as a result of that, with converged infrastructure, we're going to help them simplify, we're going to help them integrate, we're going to help them automate, so they use their IT to help drive better business value, to help them drive better business outcomes, as opposed to spending a lot of their time, effort, and facilities just on keeping the lights running or keeping things going.
What are the primary components of your energy efficiency initiative, and where does thermal logic fit in?
So the great news is that HP has a plethora of innovations and in some cases intellectual property that we've built on top of our products. So one of the phrases you'll hear quite often from members of the industry standard server team is we innovate on top and across industry standards. Let me give you a couple of clear examples. Sea of sensors. While most of our competitors are taking parts and components off of system boards to help lower costs, we're actually adding parts back in. And what we're adding is a whole bunch of sensors across the board because, again, we're focused on helping reduce overall power and cooling. Those sensors are placed in strategic locations, and as a result of that, we can monitor things such as if you're not using a particular component, we can shut it off. If you happen to have a thermal scenario, let's say, for example, you're running a visualization platform or a high-performance platform and your microprocessor area starts to get hot, why spin up all of your fans? We can only spin up the ones that are just in that zone. So if I were to look at innovations such as sea of sensors, if I were to look at innovations such as our integrated lights out and other components, thermal logic is the perfect fit for that. And again, what thermal logic does better than anything else on the planet is not just help us use lower power components, which is reducing your power and cooling. We actually help you reclaim previously over-provisioned assets, and we can help you extend the life of your data center.
Can thermal logic be a panacea for all of an IT manager's energy concerns?
So I wouldn't say that even though it's a great product, thermal logic is a panacea, because that would mean that it solves everything. Thermal logic is a great product that is built just into the server pieces, but we're not stopping at the server. We're looking at this from an end-to-end data center perspective. So thermal logic plus sea of sensors plus integrated lights out now added to additional products, and these are the items that are outside of the server. What if instead of me just being able to tell you what's going on in the server, I could tell you what's going on in your rack? I could tell you what's going on in the row, or more importantly, I could tell you what's going on for the entire data center. So thermal logic's a great product, but that focuses primarily on a subset of the data center. We're taking an end-to-end approach. And so thermal logic plus things such as environmental observer and a whole bunch of other under the larger umbrella of data center smart grid products coming out, that's when you're going to start to see a whole bunch of new things and basically items that no one else has ever thought of. As a matter of fact, if you look at some of our key messaging, just by comparing previous generations, and we're talking only 2 to 3 generations, we've been able to lower the overall energy use by 96 some odd %. And equally as important, we're the only team that can confidently walk into a CIO or maybe even a CFO's office and guarantee them a 2-month ROI. Think about that for a second. In less than 1 quarter, we can actually give you a return on your newly purchased server. And that's, again, because we've got all the intellectual property on top of and across industry standards.
Jim, there's a lot of recent announcements from HP and partners such as Intel and AMD. What are some of the innovations and results delivered through those partnerships?
HP prides itself on our ability to partner with folks and jointly to have us go off and look at what are our customers' key pain points and how we can mutually help solve them. As a matter of fact, if you look at some of our most recent announcements, we're going after quantifiable items that allow our customers to do more with the existing infrastructure assets they have. Items such as, when you look at it from an ROI perspective, we clearly can deliver a 2-month ROI. That's a pretty powerful statement considering that we're just coming out of one of the worst economic environments in the last 82 years. So within 1 quarter, or less than 1 quarter actually, we'll be able to show that someone has got a true return on their investment. So if you look at consolidation ratios as another example, we have a 22-to-1 consolidation ratio, and that's about an average. But what that means is that if you look at multi-generations of ProLiants, and we're only talking 2 or 3 generations, the firepower and the compute power that you have in one ProLiant today is the equivalent of 23 previous ones. So when we talk about taking the next leap in terms of technology, the next leap in terms of design, those are the kind of things that we tend to focus on. And since most of our conversation has been around thermal logic and energy efficiency and everything else, the beauty is that we have a 27 times, 27x times the amount of performance per watt from a previous generation of product. And equally as important, we can help reduce energy efficiency by 96 some odd %. So clearly, when it comes to industry's best value proposition, both because of innovation and because of partnerships, HP is clearly delivering today.
What do IT managers need to do first in implementing a viable data center power reduction program?
So frankly, they need to start looking at it from a true end-to-end data center perspective, which is what the converged infrastructure vision allows for them. They need to start looking at this systemically, and to use one of our parlances, they need to start small and build fast. And what I mean by that is by just buying a ProLiant server, they instantaneously get intellectual property and, more importantly, true value from things such as sea of sensors and integrated lights out. Now you can add on top of that items such as thermal logic, dynamic power capping, and various other components. And then as we start rolling out more and more under our larger data center smart grid, whether it be around environmental observer or other items, now you can have a true end-to-end view from server, storage, networking, and even facilities, all using one single pane of glass that allows you to manage your power and cooling as easily and as simply as you can manage all of your server, networking, and storage assets. Our vision is that power and cooling should just be another item that you have a pool of. You reach in, utilize what you need to do in terms of running an application or a workload, and when you're done, release it back into the pool. No longer should power and cooling be a set and forget type environment.
Have some IT managers been underestimating the critical role that memory and storage play in the energy challenge that they are facing?
So I don't think that they've underestimated it. I think they probably were not cognizant of. And what I mean by that is, if I were to mentally rewind to 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of folks knew that power and cooling was expensive, but frankly that was paid for by a different team. It was actually paid for by the facilities organization. So the net is that if you were in your individual IT silo, it was not a major concern. I think now folks are willing to look across their data center, look at each of those individual components, and the net is that yes, people are now starting to look at memory and hard drives and other key components and trying to make sure that they're getting the best power utilization, and equally as important, that those fit into a very good systemic converged infrastructure-like approach.
Jim, why have you looked to Samsung for integrating viable green memory and storage value propositions into your thermal logic initiative?
So for us, it was a really easy answer. I mean, if you look at HP and you look at Samsung, it's actually a really great partnership. And it's a great partnership because we're of like minds. We're of like minds in that we're both technology leaders. We're of like minds because we're both innovators in this space. And we both share the passion for reducing energy usage overall and helping people become more energy efficient. So case in point, if you look at what's going on in the SSD space and the fact that we can lower energy usage by 90 some odd %. If you look at the transition between DDR2 to DDR3, we can help lower the energy utilization there by 70%. So when you take that kind of leadership, that kind of innovation, and you pair it on top of what we've already done with thermal logic and dynamic power capping, and then use the even bigger envelope of converged infrastructure and looking at that across the data center, that's a pretty powerful value proposition that only the two of our teams can bring together. And as we look forward into the future, we're looking for a lot more innovation and a lot more partnership between our two firms.
And Jim, finally, will the IT energy dilemma worsen over the next few years, or can the tide now be turned with remedies such as HP's thermal logic?
So I firmly believe that, had we been on old course and speed, it most likely would have gotten worse. But clearly now energy efficiency has become one of the key conversations that we have with most CIOs. I mean, frankly, I have the pleasure and honor of talking to about 50 or 60 a year. And the bottom line is every single one of them now bring up the energy efficiency and the power and cooling request, and how can we help them lower that? So to answer your point succinctly, I think that now the recognition is there. It can only get better from here, and equally as important, by partnering with folks such as Samsung, we're going to do our best to turn this into a previous customer pain point, now into something they can easily manage, easily measure, and more importantly, feel very comfortable that they're reducing their number one OpEx spend item.
So Jim, thank you very much for your time, and this was an impressive interview that we conducted with you. Here at Tech at Work, we're absolutely excited to be a sponsor, and we're fascinated by all the technology that HP is showing. to the IT industry here in Europe. And we're looking forward to the cooperation and the partnership with HP.